The Adirondack Park is governed by the Forever Wild Clause in New York's Constitution from 1894. But despite that foreverness, the park and its people are always changing. That's what makes it such a fascinating place. Two big evolutions happened this week. One that protects the century-old practice of mining for a semi-precious jewel, and one that shutters a half-century-old summer camp. Two data points on the long arc of Adirondack history on today's Story of the Day.
Support for Story of the Day comes from Clarkson University, offering over 95 programs of study with campuses in the Hudson Valley, Central, and Northern New York. More at clarkson.edu.
Hey, I'm David Sommerstein. It's Friday, TGIF for real, November 15th. First up, the mine that will continue to be for decades. A garnet quarry in the southern Adirondacks got the go-ahead to expand its operations yesterday. The Adirondack Park Agency approved the permit for Barton Mines, which operates in Johnsburg. Emily Russell reports.
Barton Mines has been in Johnsburg for nearly 150 years. The company mines for garnet. In its permit application to the Adirondack Park Agency, Barton Mines said without the ability to expand on site, it would have to close within the next 4 years. Johnsburg Town Supervisor Kevin Bean said the economic impacts of the mine closing would be widespread.
If Barton Mine were to close, we wouldn't have a grocery store in North Creek. If Barton Mine were to close, there'd probably be a big question mark as to whether the school would continue to be in existence.
Barton Mines employs about 100 people in the southern Adirondacks. To stay open for another 6 decades, the mine says it needs 55 more acres to store its tailings pile, which is essentially the mountain of rock dust left over after garnet has been removed. But some locals have raised concerns about that rock dust. APA Chair John Ernst brought that up with agency staff at Thursday's meeting.
There were a lot of public comments on dust and the mitigation, which you mentioned. Mm-hmm. Is there anything new? I mean, this is sort of a DEC question, I guess, but is there anything new being done? There has been mitigation in the past.
The DEC does oversee the mine's operational permits. APA staff said there was dust mitigation on site, including the use of a palliative, which coats the dust and is meant to reduce how much of it becomes airborne. Another reoccurring complaint in the hundreds of public comments sent to the APA was about noise. The APA's Corey McGee told the board what Barton Mine does to limit noise on site.
Normal quarry operations will be taking place behind a 60-foot mine face, thereby mitigating off-site noise propagation. Noise mitigation measures will continue to be implemented on site, including using a noise dampening blanket on mobile equipment such as the rock breaker.
The permit doesn't tackle the noise or dust complaints, though it does cut back on off-site trucking hours. Right now they end at 10 p.m., but the new permit has them ending at 5 p.m. Thursday's APA meeting had a packed audience, which included the town supervisors of Johnsburg, Minerva, and Warrensburg. Jerry Delaney from the Adirondack Park Local Government Review Board highlighted their presence in the audience.
You don't usually see those people in this room, and that's because this company is such a big part of their communities and their economic sustainability that, this is a really important thing for them.
After about 40 minutes of questions and discussion, the permit went up for a vote.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Aye. So the permit is approved.
After the meeting, the folks from Barton Mine shook hands, celebrating their permit's approval. Johnsburg Town Supervisor Kevin Bean was also excited about the outcome.
I'm just thrilled for them, and I'm relieved for the town of Johnsburg and the people who live there.
Barton Mines will need to re-up its permit every 5 years or so. According to its long-term plan, the company intends to mine in Johnsburg for the next 6 decades. Emily Russell, North Country Public Radio, Raybrook.
If you want to be able to fly in the United States next year, the deadline to get an updated ID is coming up. On May 7th of next year, which is less than 6 months away, everyone flying in the United States will need a passport, real ID, or enhanced ID. State officials are urging New York State residents to visit their DMV office to get a real ID, even if their license is not up for renewal. There's no additional cost beyond the typical renewal fee. For the second time this year, the state has closed a convenience store in St. Lawrence County for selling illegal cannabis products. Last week, the New York Cannabis Control Board shuttered the Canton convenience store. As the Watertown Daily Times reports, the storefront is plastered with signs that say illicit cannabis products were seized and that those products were not tested or labeled lawfully and came from out of state. The Canton convenience store is not a licensed cannabis dispensary. Another big change in the Adirondacks. A remote and much-loved Boy Scout camp is closing after over 50 years. Amy Feiereisel has more on why the iconic Sabattis Scout Reservation will no longer run summer camps.
The Sabattis Scout Camp is a remote 1,500-acre property located between Tupper Lake and Long Lake, with water frontage on Lowe's Lake. There's no cell or internet service and no cabins. Since the 1970s, Scouts have slept in tents and cooked all their meals over campfires. Edwin Thedke is the CEO of the Longhouse Council of Scouting America, which operates Sabattis' one-week summer camping programs.
It is completely disconnected from the grid. It is very rustic.
That's the appeal of the place, he says. In the 21st century, it's also the curse. Camp Sabattis is a 4-hour drive from Syracuse. And Thedke says many parent volunteers and scout leaders want modern amenities and don't like being so disconnected.
The Adirondack camps were designed to be rustic, so the amenities are less. And today's parents and leaders are not as comfortable with that.
Thedke says the camp needs a minimum of 300 scouts and scout leaders to attend its one-week camping programs each summer. In 2024, fewer than 225 did.
That 300 number is a break even. It doesn't allow me to be able to do upkeep and maintenance and stuff like that.
This comes at a tough time for the Scouts. Overall membership in the Longhouse Council, which is the Boy Scouts chapter that covers some of western New York, as well as Jefferson, St. Lawrence, and Lewis counties, has fallen from about 3,400 in 2020 to 1,800 just 4 years later. Thedke says the COVID-19 pandemic was devastating for Cub Scouts, which requires a lot of interaction in tight spaces.
During COVID, obviously, that was not something that people could do. So a lot of units just collapsed during that time frame.
That means fewer Scouts today. But Thedke says they're building back.
It's going to be some time to get us back to that number. But, we recruited 25% more this year than we did last year.
The drop in numbers in New York reflects a larger decline across the U.S. in the Boy Scouts of America, which recently changed its name to Scouting America and started accepting girls in 2018. There was the pandemic, competition with other recreational groups and activities, and the national organization declared bankruptcy in 2020 after a barrage of sexual abuse cases involving Boy Scout troop leaders, and then costly legal settlements. As Sabattis shutters in the Adirondacks, Edwin Thedke says there will still be Adirondack Scout camps like Massawepie outside of Tupper Lake and Curtis Reed north of Lake George. Those both have dining hall facilities and are connected to the grid. Thedke says the Longhouse Council has not yet decided what to do with Sabattis.
Our hope is that whatever we do with it, it is available to, scouting community forever. So we're hoping that it would be to the park itself or the DEC or something like that.
Thedke says his local chapter, the Longhouse Council, and the bigger Scouting America have to adapt to what today's parents want to do.
And a lot of people say this is that, kids today don't want that. And I push back. I think children today are exactly the same as they were 100, 200 years ago, even a mere 50 years ago. It's what we as parents and adults allow them to do or expect them to do that has changed. And because of that, we have to change with the times.
He says scouting has a strong future if chapters like his are willing to meet people where they are and where they're comfortable. But that might not be an Adirondack camp like Sabattis. Amy Feiereisel, North Country Public Radio.
We have more news all the time and through the weekend on our website, ncpr.org. Music today by Eddie Lawrence of Saranac Lake and Mark Corey of Watertown. Have a super weekend. I'm David Summerstein, North Country Public Radio.